Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. We have a very special guest with us, a new guest, and one that I've been looking forward to for a number of years. The one and only Mr. Scotty Sachs, the founder of Sovereign Radio. We're going to be talking about a number of issues today as it relates to, of course, financial and geopolitical. And in the other category, Scotty and I have a number of symbiotic relationships. So this was a godly, divine opportunity. And at the end of the podcast, stay tuned because we have a special announcement about some of that relationship as it will burgeon forward. So if you're new to the podcast, please do like, subscribe, and share as it helps the channel grow and others to gain in the knowledge you're being currently afforded. So as we always do customarily with new guests, I will read his bio thusly. Scotty Sachs is the host of Sovereign Radio Broadcasting from the belly of the beast to the mainstream media since the onset of the global scamdemic in 2020 on AM News Talk Radio in Texas and California. Sovereign Radio is an online radio network that will go into syndication in well over 100 markets before the end of 2025. Since the early 1980s, Scotty has been entrenched in production and syndication of television and radio programming, as well as managing over $1 billion of advertising and sponsorship deals in mainstream media, television, and radio, the music industry, as well as professional sports such as the NFL, NBA, NHL, and MLB. He has produced the syndicated TV and radio shows for legends such as Johnny Cash, Kenny Rogers, James Brown, the U.S. Navy Blue Angels, and ESPN Offshore Boat Racing Series. He is an MSN insider and whistleblower, revealing the MO of the cabal media in the entertainment complex. He is continuing to blow the whistle with his new presentation, quote, The Rise and Fall of the MSN Cabal. Scotty is conversant with all of the critical issues of our time. He has an in-depth working knowledge of the Operation Mockingbird mainstream media, Federal Reserve, fiat money system, Rockefeller, medical corrupt system, the agenda of the global scamdemic, vaccine, bioweapon, big tech censorship, the woke left education system, and the destruction of America through illegal alien invasion and open borders. His high energy and articulation of said subject matters make him a compelling radio host and guest on any show. Also, personally, he is a fitness enthusiast, scuba diver, and proud father of a 17-year-old daughter named Skylar. And with that, Scotty, welcome to the podcast.
John, it's good to finally talk with you on your show. It's good to be here. We've talked many times now offline, and it's good to join you. Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's an honor, Scotty. And as I mentioned to you before offline and to the audience now, this is definitely a divine moment. So let's set the table at what would be expected, the obvious touch points. How did Sovereign Radio get started in its inception?
It's a good question because I did not plan to do a radio show. Sitting around a boardroom with executives from a radio network talking about two subjects in particular, the Federal Reserve and what I called the pandemic. They didn't understand either of those two subjects. They thought the Federal Reserve was like many people do, right? The bank owned by the United States and the Treasury runs it. Of course, right? They didn't understand nothing federal about the Federal Reserve, and there are no reserves. So when I explained it to them in principle, I had three executives in the room. Their mouths are kind of hanging open. These are men in their 50s who never gave thought to our financial system. That's not a knock against them, that because as you know, John, that's not uncommon to meet people who do not understand the basis for our financial system. Also, when I use the word pandemic instead of pandemic, they said, why would you call it a pandemic? And I explained that to them. And the three of them looked at each other and said, our audiences need to know about this. Would you be willing to go on the air and talk about this stuff? I said, not really. After an up and back and a series of a couple of meetings, they had me in front of a microphone doing a radio show every Saturday. That's how Sovereign Radio started. There were some radio executives who were on the right side of the spiritual war, were conservatives, wanted the truth out, and had the guts to allow me to bring forward the subject matters that you've been talking about on your show for years too, that just that dog doesn't hunt in mainstream media, as you know. And somehow I've been getting away with being able to talk about these subjects, all the above that you mentioned in my bio. A lot of that has to do with the relationship I have with these people. I brought them a lot of money over the years in advertising and sponsorship deals. They like money, and they want me to keep bringing it to them. And I think by and large, mainstream media executives, this might surprise people. By and large, today they are conservatives. They're just stuck in a bad system. And if you're 55, 60, approaching your pension and your retirement from your radio or TV network, the last thing you're going to do with kids in college and a pension upcoming is quit your job. It's just not a practical thing for a guy in his late 50s or early 60s who's running a TV or a radio station to quit his job at this point in his life. It makes no sense. So they're hanging in there. They understand what's going on to a great extent, not the way you and I would understand it, but yeah,
Mhm.
it's very interesting that the men running most TV and radio stations are just biding their time to get the hell out, to be honest, John.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all, Scotty, because I come from the music world, as you know, in the entertainment world. We talked about that, and
Right.
this is a, for lack of a better term, an extension point of that in a much deeper, greater sense. I getting
Absolutely.
the opportunity with you and many other great guests to be able to do even greater things than I was able to do at that time in my music career, and will be thusly post RV, which we'll talk about later on. Obviously, we both have a vested interest in that subject, as does our audience. But first things first. Yeah, and it's, when I would tell people here, either offline or on podcasts that you've seen, that you go to the banks and you think you're dealing with a manager or a branch manager, they would have a reasonable comprehension level in terms of Basel III or the QFS system or the reset. And either they're lying or they just are literally clueless. And it's hard for people to, process that, both in the industry and even our audience. Is, I'm sure it's, well, some people it's not hard to believe, but I'm saying people who are, coming new to the movement here in this late hour, it's like, how could they not know? But we just make a lot of presumptions and assumptions that people in higher positions know these things. And as you've articulated just now, in many instances, they do not, which is fascinating. So thank you for that. Scotty, the next point I want to talk to you about is how you and I came together. Is a very interesting story. I think our audience needs to know. It's a very personal one. I was following a gentleman that you're good friends with. I've been following him for at that time, better part of 8 years. And I want to give acknowledgement to my friend Jolene on our team, who knew him during Phoenix Rising Radio 15 years back. I've been following him, as I said, since probably about 2015, 16 ish. And I stopped in 2023 for a number of reasons. But I'm referring to Phoenix, also known as David, PIR. As many people know, I use his Telegram articles, particularly in geopolitical laws and warfare orders. He's a mastermind that subject, as you would agree. But that's how I found out about you in 2021. And I said, if I ever get the chance to meet this guy, Scotty, I would love to have that happen. And I prayed for years about a chance happening. So this whole conversation literally is divine appointment. Talk a little bit about your experience, about how you came to know PIR, what your relationship with him was, and how that all culminated to present day.
Yeah, well, I'm humbled that you prayed about our meeting and our being able to do this today. Um, yeah, so I met Dave, Patriot Intel Report, through a mutual group we both are a part of. It's a group that is a humanitarian group that is, as you know, tied to the financial reset. Um, he and I connected because we both were in communications. We were both creating content, and I thought it'd be interesting to have him on my show. And at one point, he had a weekly segment where he talked about astrology and where things were in alignment or out of alignment, if you will. And I think for the better part of a year, he had up until 2023, he had a regular segment on the show. Of course, now he's just on Telegram. So, but yeah, that's how we met, part of a group together. Brilliant guy when it comes to geopolitics, military. Of course, he is a very highly trained military. I think he was a Green Beret,
Army
uh,
Ranger, I believe.
Army
Yeah.
Ranger. Yeah, Army
Yeah.
Ranger.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of knowledge in those areas, and certainly understands the financial reset very well.
He does. Yeah, he does to a degree. As you know, we talked about this. He was gracious enough in 23 to bring me on his show, his podcast Incognito, because our team through me kept pumping out information. So, one of the things I want to impress upon you and a lot of people, people know now, but I'm saying when I started this podcast nearly 2 years ago, I know a lot of people, and I'm not trying to make this about me. I'm just the story as it's germane to you and I. A lot of people are like, who is this guy? How does he know this stuff? Where does this guy come from? That always happens with new people. But what those people didn't understand is that for 11 years, our team was grinding behind the scenes. My sword was being sharpened for this moment. And PIR was instrumental in that component piece of knowing what we know. So I was pumping information to him through the team every day. I think I just finally wore him down. He's like, I just bring this guy on and shut him up. but
Mm.
but it was because I really was earnestly trying to work with him and his audience to get the truth out, because we both know there's only a handful of people, military, who know the exact date of this, and they're not telling, and for good reason. We as a society, we think we can be trusted with it, but we can't. We God knows the timing better than we do, right? And the good news is we're being able to work together in concert to get his people to the finish line to win together, right? Regardless of age, regardless of politics, race, none of that stuff matters in heaven. So it doesn't matter here, so far as we're concerned. But that's kind of how I came into the fold with Phoenix. And again, when I heard you, I was like, everything to me was puzzle pieces tying together. So this was a very important seminal, coming together, this podcast, you and I. So thanks for sharing that part. I want to share with you a quick screenshot. It's going to be no surprise to you and probably not to the whole of our audience, but I like people to see visuals, because if people can see it, not everybody can see with spiritual eyes. So we got to help them get there. This is a post that came up this morning on X. Whiplash, who's a pretty well-respected truther, as you know, Jerome Powell setting to resign, and then the Fed. So very obvious setup question to you, which would be, what can you tell us about that? And we believe Judy Shelton is going to be wholly picked to be his successor as the Treasury, since the Fed was baked into the Treasury. You and I both know during the scandemic in 2020, very quietly, President Trump did that. I've shown articles in the past on my podcast. What are your thoughts on that? And what do you think about Judy Shelton supplanting him?
Well, first of all, as far as Jerome Powell exiting and ending the Fed, and this is baked into the cake, as you and I know. It's been coming for years. In fact, it's probably happened already. A lot of what we're seeing has already happened. We're watching them. The idea of what we're watching a movie is so true in many respects.
Yeah.
So, uh, you know, Trump and Powell probably have a much better personal relationship than they'd let on to know publicly. I don't think it's personal between the two of them. I think it's fundamental. Trump is not a believer in the Federal Reserve banking system, never has been. And we know it's the root of all evil. Truly, the Federal Reserve central banking system is where, uh, hey, it's in the Bible. Jesus turned the tables on the money changers, didn't he? He
Yep.
had to turn the tables on them. And isn't that just what's happening again here? We're turning the tables on the money changers. And so I believe Powell's been physically, maybe he's been at the head of the chair of the Fed, but he's been gone mentally for a long time. I do believe both he and Trump knew this was coming. Judy Powell's probably ideal as far as the people I know, and this is not an area of my expertise, knowing who might be qualified to
Sure.
replace her. But I also do believe that Trump restructured the Fed underneath the U.S. Treasury in his first term. I
Mm-hmm.
think that was done already by the time fake Biden took center stage. Uh, the Federal Reserve was already under the U.S. Treasury, and it's my understanding Trump wants to use them for the good they can do consulting work. Let's just call them a consultant. They can offer a lot of advice and uh, wise words about how money flows. Now, they don't fit into the new system. Fractional reserve banking does not fit into the new system, but they still have the knowledge of running the money system for hundreds of years, certainly since 1913 with the Federal Reserve Act. Judy Shelton's ideal because she's a big believer in asset-backed currency, precious metals specifically. She's talked about currency backed by precious metals for years. So I think she makes the ideal candidate. There may be others like her, but as far as I know, uh, she's front and center for me as well.
Yeah, and thank you for saying this, Scotty, because I just had Bill Holter on the other day. You know him very well. He's definitely a gold silver aficionado, and we had this very discussion. Who he and he within himself is eminently qualified, given his background as a broker and knows the old Keynesian system. But if you think about it, also Scotty, from the standpoint, he put her out in the first term to kind of see how she would do, a temperature taker. She almost got 50% of the consensus back then in a swamp.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, with very basically being unopposed as he drains it with the right people, getting out the Dems and the rhinos, she should fare extremely well. You've got, Mike Lee of Utah. You've got more Republican senators calling for the Fed to end, calling for asset-backed transparency, all ginning up the reset. He loves to promote women. Since the '80s, during his, real estate tycoon days, if you read the Art of the Deal, he wholly talks about his entrustment of women in higher positions because, given the right people, they can bring a nice nuance of professionalism, impartiality, and yet some human touch to the element, right? So, she's a very polished person. I think she would do exceedingly well. I will disclose a little bit that you and I are trying right now feverishly with the late season we're in the reset movement to try to get her on the podcast with the connections we have to try to have an interview to talk about this before we believe she's ginned up. So there's a lot of things that would make her, as you said, an ideal candidate. Let me bring another screenshot
While
for
you're doing
us.
that, I might also add, I think
Please.
women are pretty darn good at multitasking. I think in many respects
Good
they're
point.
better than we are. They've been put in a position of having to be moms and
Mm-hmm.
wear a lot of hats. So I think, from my standpoint in business, the women I've hired have always been good at multitasking.
I'd have to be inclined to agree with you. I think it's built in to some degree to their DNA. Just like anybody, you're better off, I think, when you can focus on a couple of things because you can give it more attention. But moms have to, like you said, running a household, dealing with kids, dealing with schedules, dealing with bills, that sort of thing. Yeah, and I think given her background, adding that to that component, I think you're right. So this is another question I want to ask you, Scotty, since we're on the financial bend here, and obviously the bane of our existence. Uh, this is in regards to the RV currency reset status. It's been suggested to me, some people on the inside, that this happening of ISO 20022 for Crypto Week, which I've talked about on other podcasts, starting on Monday, but actually taking place within the banking system on Friday, because oftentimes banks do things over a quote weekend,
Hmm.
is going to be a critical tipping point for not only the cryptos, but how they interplay with the currencies as the blockchain moves forward to support the banking system to do the exchanges. I'm wondering what your thoughts are about the importance of this happening in the next couple of days.
Given the fact that crypto is on the rails of the new system, it's built again, baked into the cake of the new system. I believe it is XRP specifically that is going to help. And this is the area, technical parts of moving currency online are out of my pay grade, so to speak.
Sure,
But
sure.
because of XRP, transactions will move in milliseconds rather than take sometimes 15 minutes. You send somebody a wire now and through a bank, not through one of the pay apps that usually the money arrives pretty quick, but
Mhm.
certainly takes minutes, if not tens of minutes.
Right.
In the new system, because of XRP, the technical side of that, money will move in milliseconds. If I'm transacting business with you and I flip the switch on my side to send Jon Dowling money, you're going to get it immediately. And
Right.
it's not going to go through any banks. That's the other key part of the new system. We're not going bank to bank anymore. We're going peer to
Peer to
peer,
peer.
one to one. Yeah. So as one of my friends likes to say, we're going from sci-fi central to DeFi,
Mm.
or a financial system that's decentralized. He likes to call it DeFi. So yeah, where the decentralization is so critical, takes the control out of the hands of the money changers, the bankers.
Yeah, 100%. I've been saying for a while, as you know, we need to become our own central bank, and that is a component of that. So then I will ask you the follow-up question, and it's just, from what you know, what your personal ethos is, what type of time frame are you reasonably expecting for us to be able to go peer to peer?
You know, we've been talking about this literally since 2013 because of this group that I joined.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Interestingly, in 2015, we were called emergency call. They said it was going to happen in 2 weeks. This was in 2015. They were so sure it was happening back then.
Right.
So when it comes to timing, uh, I get a little leery about putting dates out. The only thing I know for sure is it is God's timing, and I know you agree with that. And my understanding is it's going to happen this summer, without a doubt, whether it's July or August. When does summer end? In September sometime?
Like I think what mid-September, late
Yeah,
September, something like
I
that.
think by the time we get into September, this new peer-to-peer system, uh, it- call it the quantum financial system, call it
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want. I
Mm-hmm.
do think it's going to get rolled out this summer, John.
I think you're right. I think you're right. Just my own personal title. I call it the quantum people system because we're just going back to constitutional money, Haggai 2.8, God's gold and silver, which is the baseline for the bonds, cryptocurrencies, da da da, as you know, down the line. Yeah, I am inclined to agree with you. That's even in terms of the peer to peer is even faster than what I was expecting because I was thinking realistically it might take 3 to 5 years because the banks might not want to go away. But in ipso facto, to your point, they've already been dealt with behind the scenes. So I'm more
They
than
have been.
happy to concede a faster expediency of that time frame anytime. Now I'm going to be careful in this next question because you and I both are involved in this, something non-public, we'll put it that way. You were talking about humanitarian funds, and I know they're there. There's kingdom projects. People don't. I've always told people you don't need to have them to do the current public exchange. You don't need to have a trust, although we recommend it. It's if you can afford to do it, it's a good idea because it just expedites the process of where monies are going outside of their system. It gives you more control and leverage than you'll already have. But there's been some information, I've talked about online, offline, that has come to light that seems to strongly suggest that after the 14th, when ISO takes effect next week, that will expedite, speed up, whatever you want to call it, the reset process. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. It has to. That's the whole purpose of the switch in that back wall of July 14th. So has to expedite the reset. As far as when monies get released, humanitarian funds and people who are in groups, really, again, that's where I get leery of dates,
Sure.
and the old dates and rates. There are dinar blogs, and you can read the online blogs. I think most of those guys are looking for clicks. Let me put it this way: the one factor that your audience may not have heard that fascinates me about the whole thing. Take whatever number you want and put 90 zeros after it. 90 zeros. That is the value of the assets that are being brought to bear from many funds. You people have heard of the Saint Germain fund and this fund and that fund.
Mhm.
90 zeros of assets. That's enough to feed the world a million times over and to make sure that we do have a level playing field. The whole purpose of the reset is to give every country a fair shot at revaluing their currency based on their real assets and being able to call their own shots. Look at what the Federal Reserve central bankers did to places like Africa. They have literally, I don't know what other word to use, raped their land, their natural assets from the ground for centuries. And now we're going to give the continent of Africa a very fair shot at taking their assets, part of this 90 zeros I'm talking about, in assets. I think I may have told you in 2009, I had a friend that was doing a study with Google Earth measuring in-ground assets of 207 sovereign countries.
Mhm.
Isn't that interesting? Basel III was signed by 207 countries, I believe.
Mhm.
So that number was not surprising, but what's in the ground? That's what Google was measuring. So that a nation like Colombia, who doesn't happen to have gold in abundance, diamonds, any of those minerals, but guess what? They're the wealthiest nation in terms of coffee and coffee, natural coffee, the ability to grow coffee, the fertile ground God gave them. They'll actually be able to factor that into the value of their currency. So it's a fascinating time to be alive. And I think it may take 3 to 5 years to really see the impact of the new system. But really, if you fast forward a decade, we're going to be living in a completely different, abundant world. I think we're moving from scarcity to abundance very quickly because of the new system.
1,000%. I mean, the wealth of the wicked, as you know, biblically is laid up for the righteous. That's what we're seeing. Hewitt said it's biblical. You start, again, puzzle pieces and how they all integrate is what we like to do best. And you're helping with that. You know, Google number, you talked about that. It's like 120. So you just take the number, you know, if it was 100, let's say, or whatever, 90, whatever it is, and add that to the to the 90 you're talking about, and you're essentially getting to that point you're discussing. You look at Trump, you clearly see that he's leveling the playing field. While he's doing that, he's making these trade deals. Notice he said by August 1st, he moved it from this week to the 9th. He's giving time for all these countries to come in and set up shop with trade deals. I really think what he's doing is a head fake with reciprocal trade, like he did 0% with Argentina. Ultimately, that's what he's going to do with Brazil, but they got to have a narrative to get everybody woken up. South Africa is in complete corruption shambles. We've got a guy that we're watching closely. You've heard on, if you watch our podcast, Nelson Chamisa, who is a Christian. He, he's working with Trump and Musk, Starlink. We'll talk about them in a moment. But they've got, whether people believe it or not, because again, Cyril Ramaphosa, the current corrupt placeholder in Zimbabwe, they're not showing all the assets. So people don't believe they have what they have because they've been deceived for so long. The deception has to be, I mean, Iraq, you got, Erdogan's working in Turkey. Remember, they're part of the Kurdistan region, the 16% of the oil revenues, credits. The Iraqi citizens are going to get oil revenue credits in addition to whatever their country's one-to-one rate or whatever it's going to be in country in Iraq. You're seeing a seminal removal of corruption. Turkey is working to get the corrupt Iranian proxies out of the green zone in parliament, right? You've got Zimbabwe, we talked about. People say, well, he made a trade deal with Vietnam. Yes, for the dong. Well, they're a communist country. Are they? Or is that just the front they're going to use to sweep it from behind? People don't know what they think they know. They know what they've been told to this point. You started this podcast talking about the executives with whom you worked having a certain core competency of their understanding of what they were told and what they were shown. But in actuality, it was something entirely different. You were removing the pay no attention to the man behind the curtain scenario. So you look at the dollar index is tanking. It's in the low 90s, right? Excuse me, low 90, 96, low 96.20 as of this morning. You look at silver, you look at gold, right? XRP, gold, XLM, XDC, silver, excuse me, XLM, silver, XDC, copper. Notice copper starting to take center stage in the tariff talks. Why? Because silver is going to be scarcity, right? Yeah, robotics manufacturing, people buying it up like us left and right. They're going to have something to turn to. Copper and its wiring is another great conductor of electricity in lieu of silver. So as you see these pieces coming together, it tells a very exciting story about where we're headed.
You used the word transparency. I think it's important to point out to your audience.
Mm-hmm.
That is the true beauty of the new system, transparency. It's not that I can see your banking transactions and you can see mine.
Right.
It's that nothing is hidden. It's all there, open ledger, open source, in a blockchain. And the best part It's my understanding there's no way you can take dark money, ill-gotten money from drugs or trafficking or any of that and bring it into the new system.
That's right.
Won't happen. They will not be able to bring their dark money into the new financial system. To me, that's just uh, an amazing death blow to the deep state. They cannot bring their ill-gotten funds into the new system.
Well, that's absolutely correct, Scotty. And there, we talk about one of the few math subjects I remember was algebra, quadratic equations. I'm not a left brain math person, but I remembered quadratic equations because it's about balance. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So there's light, there's dark. You're right. In the new system, they can't dark shadow. They can't print money anymore. Mafias are going to have to either go out of business or learn to do business another way if they're going to survive, because they won't be able to launder money anymore. No more pedophilia. So it's all out in the open. The downside is they want to put us in the beast system where they control everything we do. We as Americans have an ability to effectuate that change by saying no, more so than in Europe, where unfortunately they're more inclined to go that way. So again, it's a blessing and a curse, because ultimately they want to take us into a beast system. So that's why it beckons the need for us to become our own central bank, where we can have our own land, have our own currency, grow our own food, be self-sufficient, which is what we do here as a DIY, right? It's not, we're not going to spoon feed people and do it for them, but we're going to help put them to the path, illuminate it, and then it's up to you to walk it. We can't go into the bank and exchange it for them and spend their money and wipe their nose. They have to do that. But we've been so conditioned. Key words, right? Reagan said it the best. One of those scariest words is, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Always be leery when somebody says, well, we're here to do it for you. When you see commercials, you're in the commercial world, sneak that word in, for you. No, do it for yourself. It's nothing more gratifying than when you learn something on your own, or discover the truth like we have, or the satisfaction of a hard day's work, or learning something difficult that escaped your ability prior. And so it's really critical that people become their central bank, become critically thinking, become solution oriented, not problem oriented, because that's how they keep us stuck in their matrix.
Absolutely. G. Edward Griffin's been telling us since the late 60s, early 70s, warning us about the central banking system. And in fact, the communists that are behind it, their plan for the world. He's been sharing that. There are videos of him online since 1969 talking about the ills and the woes of the Federal Reserve banking system. He just wasn't put front and center mainstream. We were fed the narrative. And interestingly enough, these guys you talked about running banks, at executives at a banking level, they may be so compartmentalized, they don't know their left hand from their right hand. They know it, they know how to run a bank, but they don't know what's going on around them outside of their own bank, right? So very, very interesting to see the changes, and it's going to take several years of educating people. Obviously, there'll be a need for our kind of information that we create for years to come. This education process is not going to happen for the world very quickly. I think it will take easily 5 years for the world to understand the new system.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I thought that it would take 3 to 5 years to become peer-to-peer, because it's going to take a onboarding process, if you will. I know corporations like that, a leeway time for people to learn and acclimate, especially more seasoned crowds who might be a little older and have been conditioned over a number of generations, as opposed to the younger generations who are more accustomed. We got to watch out for them as well, because they're all about convenience. If we make it too easy for them, that can be a trap as well. Right. So my ex used to be a chief compliance officer, legal cops, in the financial services world, making sure that the advisors were not ripping off their clients, and she saw her fair share of that. But often she'd come home and tell me about how compliance didn't even deal with regulatory people. Regulatory people didn't deal with sales. They kept them segregated on purpose so that nobody knew what the left and right. That was all on by design. Manipulation.
Very compartmentalized.
Yeah. And we our financial system is a lot like our legal system, which is a lot like our food system. There's two sides to the coin. There's what I call the twins. There's a good twin and a bad twin. Most of our lives, we've only seen the evil, rotten twin that's here to do harm. But behind the scenes, there's a really good twin we just haven't been introduced to yet. We're about to be. We could go on and on for days, Scott, as you know, and I'm going to be on your podcast next week, so we can continue this. But for keeping it tight and juicy and relevant, switching to geopolitical for 1 second, as we close up today, what can you talk about for people in terms of two things: the American Party, what effects that will have on the nation, and two, the legal, the judicial, the health system, tying into what you were just talking about in terms of a transitory process, for lack of a better word. What can people feel encouraged about seeing that shift, the arrests, the justice they want to see?
Well, I think we can all see the two-party system we've been fed. Another great lie that we have two distinct parties. They're different in ideology, they're different in how they want to govern, they're different in their beliefs. They're just different wings of the same bird. This is a uniparty system we're in now. And the good news is that is going to be phased out. I don't know what it looks like, the new political system, but to that regard, it's my firm belief, John, that every system that's been built around the Federal Reserve banking system, the medical system, the education system, the political system, they all have to be torn to the ground. There's no band-aids here. We can't rip a band-aid off and put a band-aid back on. We need to rebuild every one of our systems. And I think because of open source and blockchain and this technology that we'll all eventually understand pretty well, it's going to be a lot easier to do it in a very transparent way. But we can't live within the systems they built are so evil to the core, all about money. Everything is about money. It's all about money, control, and power. That's it. That's how they run the world. Um, I like, as always say, bribery and blackmail are the currency of the Federal Reserve and how they keep people in line, right? They bribe you. If you don't accept the bribe, they'll blackmail you. That's where Epstein and Diddy came in. I mean, everything we're watching is connected. That's really, to me, the most fascinating thing. If you look around, every subject we talk about, you can connect the dots because they're all related to one another in the systems that have been built by largely the central banking bloodlines and families. We all know the names: the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds,
Bilderbergs.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, the J.P. Morgan family, the Pessoas of France, the Warburgs of Germany. These are the
Mm-hmm.
bloodline families that really built the systems, the medical system, the education system. Who funded the medical system? Rockefeller. And he had it funded to make big pharma what big pharma is today. It's not an accident, right? Rockefeller built the system this way. And as we know, if we continue on the course of living in a big pharma world, we're going to live fewer years, not longer years. We're going to start to the life expectancy is going to go down, not up, with big pharma, because it's certainly not a system built for our health and wellness uh, at all. So that medical system is most important. The education system, we have to see this woke come out of the system. We have to tear that system down. And I just don't see any system they've built for us. Maybe pieces and parts that are good we can put back into the new system, but everything's got to be torn to the ground. That's my 2 cents. I really feel strongly that all of our systems um, are just evil to the core. It's good versus evil and God versus Satan. And it really is a spiritual, this everything overarching is a spiritual war. And I know you agree with that.
100%. I mean, it's Ephesians 6:12, flesh and blood, spiritual warfare, light and dark, as you said, or just a moment ago. So working backwards, Scotty, to your cogent points, uh, one of the things I'm excited about, and I know you would concur, is this goes back to our non-public investments. We'll put it diplomat. I think people know what that means. They've been watching us long enough. Is those investments are going to be the underlayments of payments for the med beds. So I'm very incredible. We don't do dates and rates or any of that stuff, but timelines and puzzle pieces would seem to denote sometime this late summer, those med beds, which are already sitting in hospitals. I know they're at Walter Reed. We've stole the virtues of some testimonies of people we've known that have been on before, helping PTSD for military and children and the like, are going to become available as a result of said investments that will galvanize everything else. And then the public will go. I think it'll kind of all interlock like a domino effect. But that's going to be very exciting. People are going to see that. I know some people still have cognitive dissonance. They don't believe they're real. They laugh, blah, blah, blah. That's stinking thinking. That's a them problem. They got to work on that.
They don't understand the real technology behind it. Most of these med beds are being stored at military facilities.
Mm-hmm.
There are some in public places like Walter Reed, as you said, but most of them are being guarded and stored in military warehouses. Technology is being protected, but once it's rolled out,
yep.
As you and I know, it can do. And this is one of those things people go, no way, I don't believe it. I have to see it. Well, you'll
blah,
see
blah,
it.
Blah. You'll see it, all right.
A soldier who comes back from war missing a leg will be able to regenerate a new leg through the med beds.
You can get 50 years. I'm sorry, go ahead. I apologize.
No, they'll actually be able to regenerate and regrow. I don't know how, a new leg. They'll walk out. I don't know how many sessions is needed. I've been told it's all very expeditious. It doesn't take long with these med beds to accomplish the goals, whatever you need to be fixed. And supposedly will fix everything and anything.
The person that we just, I'm sorry, I apologize, Scott. I got excited when you were talking about that. My mistake.
Okay.
But thanks for being gracious. The person that, I don't know if you know the quick story, my audience knows this. I'm sorry, audience, when everybody's on the same page. We have a friend through Jerry, one of our team members. We'll call him the Marine. He served 2 tours of duty in Korea and Vietnam. Then he worked under the Department of Defense for 5 different presidents prior to President Trump, deep state. So he sat in private meetings. They knew about the dinar for years, back to 2015. You mentioned that. 3 years ago, he told me about a friend. He served with him in Korea. So these guys are Semper Fi. They will sacrifice themselves for the betterment of their guys, which I respect and understand. So he had a chance to go on himself. He gave up to his friend. His friend had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. In the old allopathic world, you don't come back from that on purpose. His friend came to Walter Reed, got into a med bed, and within 15 minutes had a 200% increase in white and red blood T cell count, got 40 years taken off of his age, and has now been walking in a field in a park with his wife somewhere in Northern California that they hadn't been able to previously walk together in 10 years. So we have real testimonials of this stuff.
It's great.
It's phenomenal.
Wonderful
people are going to be blown away with how good this stuff is. And then on the arrest part, what my understanding is that the Supreme Court, who it's in and of itself, there's 3 women or Jezebels that are going to be going away, right? We saw them brought to light with some 6-3 votes. So everybody could see who was good and who was not, who's been turned. As they're excoriated and removed, my understanding is they're meeting on cases right now off hours, even though people think they're on vacation until October. Same with the Diddy case, just a narrative to be ginned up. To bring more accomplices to the mix. We've had Lloyd Brunson on our show several times, as you know. He's just an individual person who got a civilian case to the highest level Supreme Court. He said himself, to your point about sometimes the left doesn't know what the right's doing. He said of his own admonition, quote, they could pull this case and I wouldn't even necessarily know about it. And he's right. We believe that they are hearing this case and that they're going to bring it up. And that's going to be the ability to bring about the arrests and things like that and expedite it that the people are waiting on.
Absolutely. I think that 80% of Congress is affected by that case, I do believe.
Yep.
I want to tell your audience in connecting everything we've talked about today. In 1989, please. Johnny Cash told me by virtue of the fact he wouldn't go to meetings with me radio networks, record labels. He wouldn't go to meetings. And I finally got out of he and his wife why he didn't go to meetings. And his answer was simple, because the people who run the industries are a Luciferian satanic cult. They worship Satan.
Yep.
Now, in 1989, I couldn't go online and do any research on that. I did go to a library and did, of course, found books on Satan and Lucifer. And 2 weeks later, it was out of sight and out of mind.
Of course.
I put that completely out of mind. But if you overlay that statement today to what's going on in the world, he couldn't have been any more clear about why he was choosing to stay outside the meetings in the system. And then Peter Jennings told me over drinks one night, I was sitting alone with him. He was drinking, I was not, that everything we see and hear on TV is a construct and a narrative to fit an agenda.
Wow.
You just take those two things, and it really does explain the world we've been living in, why people are so set in their mind, why there's this Trump derangement syndrome, why there's people who won't believe in med beds. You could go on and on.
Yeah.
The naysayers, those who want to believe we're destitute for a life of scarcity
Yep.
because they've been told so by the media their entire life, over and over and over again. Peter Jennings said it. It's a construct and a narrative to fit an agenda. And the agenda wasn't our best interest. It was, again, back to the Federal Reserve, those that ran the money system. The whole agenda was designed for them to have more money, more control, and more power. Simple as that. And those two gentlemen really, I think, told me things that are so profound to what's happening today. Why we have this divide, why Americans are so divided is because of the mainstream media. Those living in the matrix, they don't understand what Peter Jennings meant by the construct and a narrative to divide us. They just don't understand that. And fortunately, we got people like you out doing good work, and many others. I'd say there's at least 200 podcasters, broadcasters, influencers who I would trust to disseminate information that they're doing their best to deliver the truth.
Yeah.
The best they understand it anyway.
Sure.
No more of this world. We don't live in a world that Peter Jennings lived in, where everything is a construct and a narrative to fit an agenda.
Right.
We are really trying to get that, what we know, the best of our ability, the truth out there about the financial reset, about the medical system, the agenda of COVID-19. I think our community storytellers, I think we've done a good job of getting that truth out there.
Like you said, we do the best that we possibly can. I mean, I've always said to my audience, are we perfect? No, because you're not, we're not. But do we have, I think, 80 to 90% over the target? Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And the people that we bring in, to the best of our ability, help substantiate that by tying in puzzle pieces and threads and weaving in the intricacies of how they interplay. I want to read something really quick to you because the news is coming up so fast and precipitously now, Scotty, as you know. This just in from Watcher Guru. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, love her, introduces a bill to eliminate federal capital gains tax on home sales. Well, what a coincidence, quote unquote. Part of NASARA, no taxes on tips, overtime, Social Security. Now they're talking about income tax. They're weaving in property tax because it was all unconstitutional. And as I've told our audience, no capital gains. Hugely important for our cryptos and our currencies. As you will hopefully, as we conclude today, I've told my audience, maybe you can speak to this. Back in 2015, my mentor, Don Ward, taught me this a long time ago. You were talking about 2015 when we thought this was going to happen. And I will say very quickly, as I've said before to my audience, there's good and bad. Have we had to wait longer? Yes. But have we gotten more people on the boat? Absolutely. If this happened in 2010 or 11 when Dr. Shabibi was in and Maliki, the bad guy, let that happen under Obama, we're not having this conversation right now, and a whole bunch of people are missing out on this blessing. So consider that when you are tempted to complain about the delays and timelines. Just saying. But I was always taught that the Global Tax Treaty back then, with the 207 some odd nations and provinces combined, ensured that there would be no taxes on this blessing, because it would wholly defeat the purpose of bringing in all that money to respective people in their countries, because they wouldn't spend it in the GDP. They would just try to offshore it or stick it in their mattress. Can you touch on that briefly?
Yeah, I do believe these transactions that we're uh, going to go through. I've never called it an investment, by the way. I've always called it
A
a
blessing.
blessing. I've
Blessing.
always called it a blessing. Yeah,
Oh, you're right.
and it is going to, federally speaking, there will be no federal tax dollars against these transactions. I do believe there's going to be states
Sure.
that try to collect tax on. They're going to call it investment income, right? As if we invested in the currency. And if we're in a private group, it really was not an investment, it was an exchange. We performed
Exchange.
an exchange. And so, yeah, I think you're spot on about it being non-taxable a transaction at a federal level. Who knows what the states are going to try to do? And we just got to hope that states like California don't do what California does so well. I think the tax rate there is 17% on personal, and on a capital gains of 17%. Are you kidding me? The
Mhm.
interesting you said about no tax on the sale of a home. We borrow money to buy a house. Where did the money come from? Our tax dollars, right?
The
We're
bonds.
borrowing our we're borrowing our own money, paying high interest rates, and then when we go to sell a home, we have to pay a capital gain tax. Are you kidding me?
I believe that's no taxation without representation. And that's the other reason to have trust, Scotty, so that if you're in the right trust, folks, we've talked about this in the past, last year, go in our archive section, you don't own it. The trust does, takes you out of the equation. They can't touch it. Property tax, whatever. And you're right, it is a blessing or a divine gift, not investment. I was speaking from a financial standpoint, but you're 100% right. So thank you for the correction.
No, I wasn't even correcting you, because in the financial world, if you sit and talk to a banker, he will refer to it as an investment.
Because they want to
That was,
trigger a
yeah,
tax. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah. No, that's why I'm glad you corrected that. So thank you.
yeah.
Well, Scotty, as we close up for today, I'm going to make an announcement at the end, but I'm going to start with you. What last words of encouragement or anything do you have for the audience, and where can people find your network?
Thanks for asking. My words of encouragement: hang in there. What you are seeing play out, I don't care if it's the Epstein list and what Bondi says and what Cash says. What you see and hear is theater of the mind. Be patient. There's a reason for everything that's happening. It would take an hour to explain why this whole Epstein thing is playing out the way it is. Believe me, we will find out everything about Epstein, who his customers were, who were the big men, who's at the real head. Because Epstein wasn't the big guy. Diddy didn't start what Diddy did. Diddy had handlers, just like Epstein. Who is really behind this? Who participated in it? I think from 9/11 to the pandemic and every false flag in between, we're going to hear the truth about everything. I do believe it's going to come out in the years left of Trump's second term. Um, and I want everyone to remain hopeful that we are really, truly moving from a world that's been intentionally created scarcity to a world that will intentionally be abundant. And it's going to take time. um, we've been waiting for change a lot of years. What's a few more months or even a couple more years? If you're in your 50s or 60s and you've lived through all this, as long as our children and our grandchildren gain the benefit, and I think most of your listeners, your children and grandchildren will live in this world that John and I have been talking about today. And that's the beauty of it. It's not about us. Now, I'm 65. For me, it's about my daughter. She'll have children one day, my grandchildren, that they are going to live in a much different world that we've been living in. And we didn't even know the world. We didn't even know and understand the world we lived in, right? For
Right.
so many years. So, yeah, I think it's going to be, we're moving to a much uh, much better place. Uh, Always a glass is half full guy, but I don't think this is optimism um, manufactured on my part. I think there's many reasons to be optimistic about where this country and where the world is headed together. There are men working behind the scenes to create peace on earth. And when you find out who they are, you're going to be really shocked. People are going to be really shocked to find out guys like Putin and Xi Jinping and Trump actually are working together on a peace plan. Are they going to talk about it to John and Scott? No, I don't think so.
Absolutely. And just to back up, Scotty, thank you for that. What you were sharing real quick. Joel 2:25 talks about getting back a double portion what the locust stole in time and money. So even for people in their age is a deep state construct. So even for people 50s, 60s, 70s that are watching my podcast, 40s, whatever, we're going to get vis-a-vis what we talked about, all that time back and money back. So you will get a rejuvenated shot of life of youth with wealth, but you still at the same time will be able to be the legend in your respective families to cement that legacy to which you were referring. So I absolutely concur with you on that. Folks, as you know, we have a great bevy of sponsors for this podcast, whether it's currencies, precious metals, or health solutions. We'll leave those links in the description. And I mentioned at the end of the podcast, so here it is, a special announcement. With the graciousness of Scotty himself, he has asked me to come on to his syndicated network, and we have agreed as a team, we prayed about it to do so. Starting next week, we will be doing monthly podcasts on Sovereign Radio. He's got a fabulous list of podcasters, and so we're honored to be a welcomed addition to that for the remainder of this season that we're in before the RV goes optically into place. And we'll leave those links in the description for his channel. Before we close, Scotty, can you just talk about some of the other podcasters that I'll be joining as part of this family?
Yeah, really, we're proud of the folks that we're bringing in like you. We've got Dave Hodges in the Common Sense Show and Sarah Westall, S. Gianon, Mike Jaco. Um, I'm missing a whole bunch. Oh, Marjorie Wildcraft. While her name is not known, the Grow Network has 450,000 members. Marjorie's teaching people how to grow their own food. We talked about that. I think we mentioned that.
Yep.
That's part of the new system we have to live in, is to learn to grow food, what we can grow at home. We've got Michelle Melendez, just wrote a great book, The Great Maui Land Grab. She wrote a book, The Truth Behind What Happened in Lahaina, Maui. She worked with the indigenous elders to come up with the truth. They know what the score is, the elders in Maui, and she's exposing the corruption and everything behind the Great Maui Land Grab. So it's really a growing group of people that, like you and like I, we just want to get the real truth out in a way that people can digest and understand. And adding you to the list will be you'll be a welcomed addition, because you are a truth teller and you are on the right side of the spirit. To me, you got to be on the right side of the spiritual war and somebody trying to tell the truth. And you're a welcome addition to the Sovereign Radio family that way.
Well, I'm honored on both fronts. I know our team is as well. And again, we'll leave those links in the description for people to see. And I will see you again next week on your podcast. Scotty Sachs, CEO of the Sovereign Radio Network. Go ahead.
Great to see you, John. Thank you.
You too, brother. We'll look forward to seeing you again. Thanks for being here. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.